Hello, scientific writers. Were you rejected? Today we're going to talk about failure and rejection in scientific writing and in science. You know, failure is a big part of science. You can't do the scientific method and have no failures. You're going to have some failed experiments. You're going to try to publish a manuscript and it may not be accepted on the first try. Chances are it won't. Maybe you'll apply for grant proposals or scholarships or fellowships, jobs, postdocs, and most of those are not going to be successful. Now, a lot of times when I talk to students and postdocs about this topic, they refer to themselves as being rejected. I think rejected is too harsh of a term most of the time. Now, I think it can be counterproductive to go around thinking all of your failures are rejections, because rejection is, in my mind, a more negative thing, and it reflects more poorly on you than a failure does, because failures are part of the process. It's normal. Now, you and your application might fail, but failure and rejection are two different things. You will have failures in your career that are not your fault, but when you're rejected, it's a bit more your fault. So in this video, we're going to look at a few different situations where you or your application might not be successful. Let's look at graduate school applications. The unwanted outcome would be that you're not accepted to that graduate program. Does that mean you were rejected, or did your application just fail? Well, it depends. Okay, so there's different reasons for not being accepted. If you were not accepted because your undergraduate grades were too low, or your statement of purpose was not convincing, or you didn't have enough extracurricular experience, test scores were too low, something like that, then you could say you were rejected. But I think the more common situation for graduate school applications, and having been a professor and been on the graduate committee where we reviewed applications to the department, I know from experience there are times when the application is not accepted, not because the applicant is not good enough, but because there's not enough funding. So if you applied to a specific professor's laboratory and he or she doesn't have grant money at that time, the department may not accept your application. Or maybe that program can only accept 15 new students every year, and they had 500 people apply and 250 of them were qualified, but they can only take 15. So the remaining 235 people are not rejected, but they're not accepted either. So that's not a rejection, it's a failure, and it's not your fault in that case. So don't feel bad about it and don't call it a rejection, because it's not, it's different. All right, let's look at postdoc or job applications. The unsuccessful outcome would be that you don't get the job. Maybe you don't even get an interview. And that's going to be the most common outcome. Does that mean you failed, or does that mean you were rejected? Now again, it depends. Now if you applied to jobs that you're just simply not qualified for, you're going to be rejected. But if you applied for a job or a postdoc opening and you are well qualified but not selected, that's because there were many other people who were also well qualified. And you might think, well, I read the description and I am perfectly qualified. There's no way anybody is more qualified than me. You'd be surprised. There is often somebody who has the same credentials, equivalent experience, and maybe even better experience than you do. So you really can't assume that you are the most singularly qualified person for that position. It's very rare that that's going to happen. Now, they can only hire one person, or maybe sometimes 2 or 3 openings might be available. If they have 200 applicants for that position, let's say the top 100 are all qualified for that position. They can't hire 100 people for a single position. So most of you are going to fail in that application, but again, that doesn't mean you did anything wrong. It doesn't mean you're not a well-qualified applicant. It's just a scarcity issue. So probably you were not rejected, probably it was a failure. Situation number 3, a journal manuscript submission. The outcome is the paper is rejected. Now, is that rejected paper a rejection or a failure? In this case, it is a rejection. So your paper did get rejected. Why is this different? Well, because a journal can theoretically accept an unlimited number of papers. So it's not like a graduate application or a job application where there's only a limited number of spots. So the journal could accept 100% of their submissions if 100% of the submissions exceeded the quality thresholds and the requirements for that journal and got good reviews from the reviewers. Now that's not going to happen in reality. In reality, 80% or more of submissions are rejected. I'll have a future video where I talk about what to do if your paper is rejected. The next situation we're going to talk about is grant proposal or a grant application. The unsuccessful outcome for that is going to be that it's not funded. Were you rejected or was it a failure? Now again, in this situation it could be either one. It depends. Some agencies are going to do a 2-round review process. For example, the NIH, where in the first round they get reviewer comments and then they rank all the proposals from the one with the best scores to the one with the worst scores, and the lower 50% are triaged. In other words, they're not sent to the review panel, which is the second step of the process. And I have another video about NIH review process if you'd like to watch that. If yours is one of those that gets triaged during the first stage of the process, yeah, you could consider that a rejection. Now, if you made it through that first stage of the NIH process, you're going to go before the review panel and you'll get another score, a summary score from the panel. If you're submitting to USDA or NSF or some other agencies, you're going to get some kind of a rating like excellent or very good or fair, something like that. So if your proposal is rated in one of the top categories, or if it has very good scores and you're still not funded, then that's a failure. And it doesn't mean you wrote a bad proposal. It doesn't mean your ideas are terrible. It just means that the agencies don't have enough money to fund all of the good projects. And so you could have done everything right and still failed your grant application. So in conclusion, what I would like you to think about is sometimes when you're not successful in science, you shouldn't call it a rejection and beat yourself up and think that you're not good enough. You should just recognize that it's a failure, which is a normal part of the process. As annoying and discouraging as that is, it doesn't mean you did anything wrong. Doesn't mean you're not good at what you do. It means you need to keep trying. And so I'm going to have another video where I talk about what to do after a failure or a rejection. So if you'd like to see that, go ahead and subscribe so you'll see it when that video comes out. All right, I hope this was helpful to you. I will see you next time, and happy writing.